want shout out and stuff?
Oh, yes. I absolutely do have a who I want shout out.
Okay. Okay. Let's get going. 1, 2, 3. Hey, welcome everybody to this week's episode of Picking and Putting. We're here in the South Charlotte Picking and Putting Studios. Liberty Bill's over there in the basement of the Liberty Bill Studios. And we're here to talk about rivalries this week, both music and golf. And behind me there, if you're watching on YouTube, is kind of a fuzzy picture of Muirfield Village 18th Hole Clubhouse, and we're giving them honors this week for obvious reasons. Muirfield tournament. I'm taking off these glasses because I can't see squat.
Night vision.
All right, and I am wearing an Ohio State hat in honor of Jack Nicklaus, so that's cool.
Oh, I see a little button on the side there. Maybe we'll get to that later.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, that one. That's for all those people up. I don't remember what state that is, but who knows?
Rhymes with Fishigan.
Yeah, that one. Well, Billy and I decided to talk about rivalries, so we wanted some old ones and some new ones. So we came up with talking about music, and it took me a while to figure out what the heck he was talking about this. But I did the research, and so we're doing the rivalry of Sweet Home Alabama versus Southern Man. And I did some homework on this, and it's kind of fun. Leonard Skinner released Sweet Home Alabama in '74, and it was their second #1 hit, and it came out on their album called Second Helping. And they wrote it actually in response to Alabama, which was also a song written by, just blanked, Southern Man, Neil Young.
Yeah, Neil.
Neil Young. He wrote Southern Man and Alabama, which was a rehash of Southern Man, but they wrote it in response to him. And the interesting thing about it was you go back and you realize the politicalization, like you talk about. But what was fascinating is those two of the writers, and I've got all the guys' names, Ronnie Van Zant and Gary Rosington and Ed King. And Van Zant wrote the lyrics, and they wrote the other two wrote the music. But two were from Jacksonville, and one guy was from Glendale, California. So they didn't have any squat to do with Alabama, although Northern Florida is kind of like Southern Georgia and Southern Alabama anyway. So, panhandle people.
Yeah, but California is not.
Yeah, no, I mean, he was just out of the blue, crazy guy. And they wrote it in response to Neil Young's book or song, like I said. And in his song, basically, he took the entire South to task over the history of slavery and its aftermath. And so that's where he came up with the name. And so they wrote theirs in response to him later. Okay, I got all these notes, sorry. And what happened was, Van Zant quoted, he said, "We thought Neil Young was shooting all the ducks in order to kill one or two with his song." That was their statements. Anytime you want to comment on it, I've said it, feel free to yell at me, Billy. But the thing I didn't remember, I can hear the song in my head, Southern Man, but the lyrics that they wrote in Sweet Home Alabama, it said, "Well, I heard Mr. Young sing about her. Well, I heard old Neil put her down. Well, I hope Neil Young will remember a Southern man don't need him around anyhow."
Yeah, it's just classic to put it. These are classic songs that were literally like, you see this in rap all the time today. These were guys talking smack to each other in classic music songs.
Yeah, these were song wars. I mean, it was
basically.
Classic. Yeah, and it was interesting. So Young, in his autobiography in 2002, it's called Waging Heavy Peace. He commented that he thought their song was a lot better.
Yeah, he's great. He really is great.
And he said, "I don't like the words when I listen to he's talking about his song.
Yep.
They're accusatory and condescending."
Yes, and they absolutely are, and I appreciate that he's had that perspective now to come back and say, "Yeah, that probably wasn't the best way to do it. Oh, and their song's better."
Yeah, yeah, and to say all those people, but but when you go back and review the history of the song, and I lived it in that time frame, so I'm older than Bill, but they get into talking about George Wallace and segregation in Alabama and all that, and I mean they bring that in, not in the songs, but for the time frame that it was written.
Yep.
And when you're back there listening to them, I didn't think anything about that. I just thought they were great songs. I mean, like I grew up in Ohio, and you had Kent State and Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young were famous.
Or Dead in Ohio. Yep.
Yeah. So that one, I knew what the words meant a little more, but most of the time it's like singing in your car, like A Deuce in the Night. I never thought that's what the words were, so I won't go there. But needless to say, I would sing it in my car. So
no, I doubt most people realize that Sweet Home Alabama is a response to Southern Man. And I think it's an important anecdote in history.
Yeah, that's a great music rivalry song. That was a brilliant take on that. I really like you coming up.
And I love both artists, and Leonard Skinner in their own way, they pushed the culture envelope. They talked about drug addiction and stuff like that in a lot of their songs. So both artists, if you go back through their catalog, they were both commenting on the cultural things of the day, which are still relevant today, as you point out.
Well, and what was interesting about Leonard Skinner, as I read through the thing, they went back and made a lot of their songs they went back historically to Muscle Shoals, Alabama to record.
That's awesome.
They had a studio. I don't know, I forget about the airplane wreck and all that stuff with them, but they were a fun band.
I saw Neil Young live in the summer of 2003, headlined one of the nights at Bonnell, and he was still rocking it. It was incredible. I mean, I'm talking a 10-minute guitar jam of just Neil going off.
Oh, Bonnell's the music festival in Tennessee, right?
Yes, I went one time in college. Don't need to go back, but I had a great time.
Where was it? Chattanooga?
Manchester, Tennessee. So it was actually only about an hour and a half, 2 hours south of Nashville, I want to say.
Well, I think isn't it close to Chattanooga? Or
not far from Chattanooga. My first time I ever went to a Waffle House was on the way to
Hey, don't be poor mouthing Waffle House. That's
good. You can't get anything better at 3 a.m.
Hopefully they're not running out of employees, because we need our Waffle Houses, especially you golfers out there. You got to have a Waffle House around. Yeah. Well, we're going to move on out of the music realm and into the golf realm. And so we decided we'd talk about, each of us would have some rivalries from our time frame, that both old and new. So I start out. You want to start, or you want me to go with mine? I'll go with my old one.
Yeah, go with your old one first.
Okay, my old one, believe it or not, you could pick out all sorts of, Jack versus Greg Norman, Jack versus Tom Watson, Jack versus Arnold. And those were all good, but Jack was just enough past Arnold's. He was there, but they became more friends and business kind of guys. So for me, it was Jack and Lee Trevino. And Lee Trevino, people don't realize, except for him hating the Masters, which if he did it to do over again, he would have won them. He was just a great striker of the golf ball. But he had this personality, he was the guy that would go out and play with no money in his pocket and gamble his house, back in Texas. I mean, there are stories about him where he played around a golf. He'd play with a Coke bottle tied to his hand and a 5-iron. And he'd go out and he'd hit the ball with the end of the Coke bottle and a 5-iron and shoot 70. He'd play, whatever. It was crazy. I don't know if that story's true or not. But that being said, the famous story was, and I remember watching this, he and Nicklaus were in a playoff at the U.S. Open, and you can picture Jack as how, he was in his, focus, kind of like Tiger.
In the zone.
Yeah, in the zone. And so they come out to the first tee, and Lee goes over to his bag and kind of stumbles around. You know how they reach in their bag and get peanut butter and stuff. And he pulls out a rubber snake, and he throws it out at Jack. And Jack kind of goes, "Whoa, what was that?" And
that's crazy.
Just to break the tension. And I think at the time, Jack just thought, well, that's just crazy. But in retrospect, he probably got a kick out of it. I'd love to hear his talk on it. And I think Trevino went on to win that playoff. So and I think somebody like Jack always brought out the best in Lee, and you forget that man won a bunch of majors. He was probably the greatest iron player.
I've heard that.
He always claimed he couldn't play Augusta because he drove it into the hillside. He hit the ball so low because he grew up in the wind. And I don't know that I believe that now, like I said. But that being said, well, who's yours? Who would you go as old couple?
So for my old rivalry, I wasn't into golf back in the day. So I'm actually going to do Duke Carolina basketball because I think modern day, I'm not as into it. Despite the fact, obviously, half my family are Tar Heel fans, but with the one and done era, it's just not as compelling to me. But when I was a kid, when you had the same players year after year facing off with each other, and especially when it got a little nasty with like Tyler Hansbrough and Sheldon Williams and all that, I used to, even as a kid growing up in the Midwest, really look forward to those Duke Carolina basketball games. And now with no Coach K, with no Roy Williams, with the one and done era, I mean, I'm still going to watch. It's still fun, but it's just not the same. And it will be really interesting. One of these two programs is going to be more like Indiana has been the last 20 years than what Duke and Carolina have been. It will be really interesting to see who got it right in terms of John Shire or Hubert Davis.
Well, I think that'll be a tough call. I think it'll probably be the coach that follows him, but you never know.
Because the expectations aren't going anywhere. It's national titles or bust.
I would be more likely to say it'll be Duke.
Well, I don't like their process. I don't like Coach K taking a victory lap. Yeah. I don't like John Shire sitting there for another year. They didn't interview anyone. Like Carolina had a honest to God, let's interview people, because you can learn stuff just from having a conversation with a candidate. And also maybe you got Wes Miller lined up down the road. I don't like this victory lap at all. I think it seems pretty self-serving by Coach K.
Well, I read what his purpose was at this point in announcing it was that they were already into the recruiting process for this year. And well, if that was the case, he probably should have done it earlier because he said he'd been planning this. Well, I went out on Twitter and Jay Belis berated me for saying, I said, well, no surprise there that Coach K followed and Jim Boeheim will probably be not far behind. And he actually Twitter argued with me. he started it, but basically what he was saying, well, no surprise that these 75-year-olds are retiring.
Yeah.
And I said, that wasn't my point. My point was it's driven also by the G League and by the transfer portal. And it's going to change the way it's done. And the money, he said, well, they changed when the money came around. And I go, okay, fine. They had the shoe contracts.
They did, but Coach K has been adamant about this, and Roy too. I think they're more fed up with the NCAA not doing anything over the last 20 years, where they just they're the ones that have to deal with it because the NCAA isn't making the rules to govern the sport. So they're probably just like, I'm sick of having to deal with this. And you know what? I'm over 65. I've got generational wealth. Let's go.
Well, I responded to him later in the day because I grew up with this growing up in the Midwest. And we had it this year with Gonzaga, where you had guys that stayed. He had seniors.
Virginia has that too.
Yeah, Virginia has that, but the school I referenced that were great that way, always in basketball, were Butler and Evansville in Indiana, and they just always had great basketball. And Evansville was a lower tier, but the great coaching and stuff. And Butler, you go back to when Brad Stevens was there, it was just wonderful to see all these guys go through the program. And that's what Carolina and Duke were. And then when Calipari started changing it and doing one and dones, and then, Coach K adapted because he had coached these guys in the Olympics and he knew what the pro athletic mindset was. Okay, fine. And I think Roy kept trying to do Roy's game where, run it, get my guards and all this and have a
he tried to do kind of both.
And he didn't enjoy it. He enjoyed coaching.
Still won a national title.
Well, I think he won 3.
Yeah, but he won one while he was kind of trying to do both, which
Oh
is
yeah,
impressive.
17.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I think I just think that's and it's a natural transition in sports to have all these guys rotate out. And the next great success will be a guy like Wes Miller, who's 30 years old, and that's what he knows. So he'll figure out. And I think the NBA and stuff will come to a consensus on how to deal with it. Sooner or later you've got to just say, okay, these kids can come right out and go, and if a kid comes out and can't make it, he should still be able to go back and play college ball. Whatever.
Yep. Yeah.
And get an education.
There's got to be a better way than this limbo that we've been living in.
Yeah, I hate that. Well, here I got my modern day ones.
Yeah, let's go.
I ain't going with the one everybody thinks where the guy on the video goes. And by the way, do you know that the video audio comment was that he commented on that awful goatee that he had, but I won't go there. Bryson on
yeah.
Brooks.
Well, the context of that video, I think Brooks is the reason it got out, because he emailed it to a bunch of his buddies and that put it out on the internet. And then somebody found it, that random Twitter user, and just published it out of nowhere. So it wasn't like a leak from the Golf Channel. I think it was traced back to Brooks emailing his buddies. So to me, that rivalry seems a little contrived to try to get some clicks and some ratings.
Yeah, I believe it. Well, so for modern day, it's great to have Tiger and Phil. And oh, by the way, we didn't do shout outs. My shout out, I guess we forgot those. My shout out was to Phil, obviously, that's what's great about that for Phil. With the Phil Tiger, he'll always be Tiger, but Phil did something Tiger didn't. So that gives him or nobody did. Jack
Tiger's got time though. Tiger's got some time.
Oh, he's got some time, but I just,
you're not seeing it, huh?
I'm not seeing that, but I just don't see it. But that being said, the other shout out was to Jack Nicklaus in Muirfield Village. And if you folks watch the TV, and by the time you're watching this video, it's probably been long over, but he came in starting when the tournament was on the 18th hole last year, and they started tearing the course up. And
that was hilarious. Like, guys are finishing up and there's a bulldozer on the ninth green.
Well, they rebuilt the whole golf course, and he narrowed fairways. He took the 15th hole was the one he really changed, and he added water, sand traps, leveled out the hill. The deal is, if you ever go there, folks, I'll put it's the quality of that course and the caliber of the grass and everything about it makes Augusta look like a dog farm. I'm sorry. You have to go to Muirfield Village in the spring, summer, and it is as plush, and it's not, the fairways are the same as the greens. They're bent grass and you can putt on the fairways. I mean, it's just, and these guys go up and just tear it up.
Yeah, I don't think it gets enough hype. I think within the golf community, people really respect it and almost treat it as very close to a major. But the broader sports community, for whatever reason, I don't know if it's lack of marketing or whatever, this thing should be right up there, just behind the majors.
Yeah, and the problem it has is, you saw it yesterday, the course is always, they've moved the date around trying to get a better date. He started out in the first week of May, and it's just wet.
Yeah, the weather.
It's the weather. So the course plays soft. I've always said, good golly, I'd love to see him bring the US Open there in an August where they could dry it out. But see, these guys, even the leader yesterday went out and shot 66.
My pick, Morikawa.
Oh, there you go. Well, he's got his putting in rivalry. Well, so here running up. I heard him interviewed yesterday. He was talking about how he's going with that claw stuff, and he's got a bigger grip and all that stuff. But okay, here's my other one. I like this one. My wife said, "Be careful how you do this one." So I had Patrick Reed versus the European Ryder Cup.
Yeah, I like that. That's real. I think that one's real.
Yeah, and you can even throw Ian Poulter in on the Ryder Cup and make it Reed versus Poulter, and but those guys are awesome, that. And then I said my second one could be Patrick Reed versus Sand. But
Patrick Reed versus everyone,
Yeah,
including his family.
yeah, but in his support, he's all about America and USA stuff, and he gets in your face. And for example, what they did at the PGA is an example. I don't know that there's a problem with that. They took it, and the entire course was treated as natural area. All the sand traps, even the ones that are real sand traps by the green, so they could ground their club, they could do it whatever they want, you know. And so I watched that and go, well, I don't buy that improving the live stuff at the time it happened. Even that's going back to, I think they stole a major from DJ back in Whistling Straits a decade ago by calling a trap a natural area, but letting people stand in it and then penalizing them for grounding his club or something. I forget, but it was stupid. Anyways, who have you got?
Yeah, I'll take the Brooks, Bryson, but I think it's all for show. I really do. They might not genuinely like each other, but I do think it's important, especially for golf and kind of this new age trying to attract young audiences. You need a little spice. So I do hope they start pairing them together in some tournaments on some Thursdays and Fridays. And you want to see these guys talking smack. And ultimately, this sets up, you alluded to it, to the Ryder Cup, because they're probably going to be on the same team. So heaven forbid they get paired together there. And I think the Ryder Cup, in terms of rivalry in golf, is by far the most exciting. We had Robert Carlson on the pod 2 weeks ago,
Yeah.
and you could see it when he was talking about it. He genuinely cares about what's going to happen, and he's not even going to be playing. He's just going to be advising. So
Yeah,
I'm excited and fired up that we're going to get that Ryder Cup this year. And also shout out to Larry Dornish, that director of golf at Muirfield. He's been there over 25 years. He was on the Golf Shop radio show and gave us a really nice preview of the changes that they've made. And I got to say, he is one of the more interesting head golf pros out there in terms of very passionate, very energetic, and talking about his course. So shout out to Larry.
Well, shout out to Larry. Yeah, those facilities. I mean, you folks, like I said, the practice facilities are amazing. He's got like 360 degrees or 270 degrees of practice tee. So no matter what the predominant wind of the day is, the guys can go out and practice for that wind on the practice tee area. I mean, it's just brilliantly laid out, and it's just a wonderful facility. And if you ever got the opportunity to go to Columbus or Central Ohio, you got to play there, the golf club in Scioto. Those are my top three, and I'm a native, so.
You would know. Yeah. Oh, I got to mention one more rivalry that I hope comes back. You're wearing the hat. Ohio State, Michigan, another rivalry that I used to love watching as a kid. Yeah. But Harbaugh needs to win some games here sooner than later, because it's not even a rivalry anymore. It's just another game on Ohio State's schedule.
Well, I mean, yeah, the sad part about that's what got John Cooper fired from Ohio State, because he never beat Michigan. And he won 9 or 10 games a year.
Exactly.
Problem is, Harbaugh hadn't done that. If Harbaugh's going to beat him, it's not that he can't recruit great athletes to the big house. It's that he hasn't had a quarterback.
And he's supposed to be the quarterback whisperer.
Yeah. So either.
But you look back on it, he had Andrew Luck at Stanford. Then at the 49ers, he had Alex Smith, and then Kaepernick with the new offense. So maybe it's been more the players than the coach in Harbaugh's success.
Well, didn't he bring in a transfer for this fall? I guess. I don't know.
Yeah. Oh, that's hard to keep track of.
But I think you're right. I think he's got to beat him soon, or
it's getting stale.
Well, it is amazing how they do transition. Ohio State transitioned from Meyer to this young guy,
and he's better. He really is.
Well, here's the thing. Back to Duke, just quickly, which is what Ohio State did in football. This guy was their lead recruiter. And he was awesome. And he was like Mac Brown at North Carolina. He'd go in the living room and say, "We will educate your child." Mom says, "You're going to that place." Well, that's apparently what this football coach, and that's apparently what John Shire does. He's a great recruiter. He goes in and he's on their level. He's young enough that he can walk in and talk to an 18-year-old, and he's close enough in age like you to be able to pull that.
I saw Shire play in high school. True story. He's from the north suburbs of Chicago.
Really?
Yeah, he was a god up there. Yeah. Not too many North suburban kids are getting scholarship offers to go play hoops at Duke.
Well, the coach is from Chicago.
Yeah, oh, that's true. I forget about that. He is.
Yeah, he was from Chicago, and people go back and wonder how hardcore he was. I mean, he was not my favorite, but he went to Army. He coached under Knight. He he was he was it was his way or the highway. I mean, he's a coach.
He evolved. Both Coach K and Roy Williams deserve a lot of credit because they came into a totally different era and they both evolved and found success in the one and done era. And that is truly admirable.
Well, I had a lot of fun talking about those guys. That Muirfield back there in the background, I hope they get going today, which is Friday the 4th. Oh, shout out to Chris Zollinger. That's my son. It's his birthday.
Oh, happy birthday.
Yeah, happy birthday, Christopher. Okay, I got a quote for you. I got a couple quotes from Jack Nicklaus. First one is, the game is meant to be fun. Focus on remedies, not faults.
Ooh.
Okay, I like that one.
I like that.
And then this is my favorite. This is a little better. It's more fun. Well, one I looked up, he said, you know what his vice is? What his big vice is?
Iced tea.
No, ice cream.
I was close. I had the ice part.
He says he goes out in the middle of the night and eats a quart of ice cream when his wife is
Yeah, it happens. It happens to the best of us.
It happens to others. The other one was, through years of experience, I have found that air offers less resistance than dirt. So, I think Jack's a 1960 graduate of Ohio State, and he was a Phi Gam there, so I have that in common with him. Anyways, a lot of fun. You got anybody you want to quote, shout out, yell at, or say anything more about before we go?
Oh, quick shout out to the Cubs, who are kicking some ass despite their owner trying to tank their season. I'm really surprised and enjoying watching that team play baseball.
Both Sox and Cubs are, I think, 33 and 24.
Two first place teams. It's fun. Yeah, it really is.
Yeah. Well, call me in August, will you?
Oh, and LeBron James. I hope you enjoy your fishing trip. You
know what? I think he'll look back on this. They won in the bubble. He just needs some time away.
They both broke down, him and Davis.
Yeah, and so good for him. They get some time off. Don't call him until October. But he is 36. But last night I saw his statistics. It was 29, 9, and 9 or something like that.
Oh yeah, he did everything he could. Oh, and we should also shout out Rick Bonnell, the Charlotte Hornets beat writer since 1988. May he rest in peace. I know I interacted with him several times, getting him booked on radio shows. He was always gracious with his time, went out of his way, was great to young people coming up in the media with the Hornets. So truly a great mentor, leaves behind a great legacy, gone way too soon, but rest in peace, Rick Bonnell, and condolences to his family and all his coworkers.
He was a great, I've read him since the original Hornets. And he was one of the things I still read when everybody was, not there, and a Charlotte Observer. And if you do know Rick Bonnell, go back and read the June 3rd article in the Charlotte Observer online by Scott Fowler.
Yes.
Who really went through and laid out his heart.
Yep.
It was very nice. Well, everybody, that's this week's issue of Picking and Putting. We'll be back with you next week or whenever. And look for us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Amazon, you name it. And we're also on YouTube if you want to watch our video and see me wearing this hat that Bill can't stand. Actually, because he's an Iowa grad, actually, I should finish up by wearing my hat that way.
Yeah, there we go. Oh, subscribe, rate, review.
Yeah, do all those things. Push all the buttons, bells, whatever.
Yeah, push them all.
We'll see you again next time, and we loved having you. See you, Billy. Enjoy.
Take care.
Take care.